Okay, the game is Shinobi. Your basic fist and stomach, foot and face arcade hit. 19 stages of major ninja warfare. Observe.
Hello everyone, it's Kevin. And today we're taking a look at Shinobi on the Sega Master System. Now I'll admit something right away. I've never played Shinobi. Another crazy thing is that when I first decided to play this game, I wasn't expecting much. Not because it's Shinobi. I mean, the series has a fantastic reputation, but because it's an arcade port on an 8-bit home console. Usually when you hear those words, you know what's coming. Fewer enemies, worse graphics, missing levels, and a game that makes you wish that you were playing the arcade version instead. Now after a few hours with it, I don't think that's what Sega made here. In fact, I think they did something much more interesting. So was I missing out on one of the Master System's best games all these years later? Let's power on and find out. Before we jump into the game, let's quickly talk about the console itself. I know I played Wonder Boy 3 and Alex Kidd before, but I actually accidentally bypassed it at the time. The Sega Master System launched in 1986 as Sega's answer to the NES. Technically speaking, it was an impressive console. It had more colors on screen, sharper graphics, and smoother scrolling than Nintendo's console in many situations. Looking back today, there are plenty of Master System games that still look fantastic. Unfortunately, as gaming history has shown us before, having better hardware doesn't always mean better sales. Nintendo had already built an incredible lead, especially in North America. They had the bigger library, the bigger marketing push, and games everyone was talking about. Back in the day, the only Master System I ever saw as a kid was a demo at a retail store. Everyone around me had an NES. Not many kids were growing up with games like Alex Kidd and Shinobi. We were mostly playing games like Super Mario Bros., Mega Man, and eventually Ninja Gaiden. What that means is that there are a lot of Master System games I'm experiencing for the very first time. And if you know me or you've seen my previous videos, that's been one of the most enjoyable parts of making these videos. Sometimes you discover games that deserve their reputation, sometimes you discover games that maybe should have stayed in the past. But where does Shinobi on the Master System fall? Let's find out. As I alluded to earlier, Shinobi first appeared in arcades in 1987. In this one you play as Joe Musashi. No, not that Musashi. Joe is a modern-day ninja who's trying to rescue kidnapped children from an evil criminal organization. Kind of like Michael Jackson in Moonwalker. Wait, is that Michael under that mask? Anyways, it's a simple story as you could see from the manual. Of course with these games, it's not that important. It's just a good enough excuse for the game to hit you with some sick ninja action. The arcade game was a huge success for Sega. It had fast gameplay, memorable music, challenging stages, and some really creative boss fights. Naturally, Sega wanted to bring it home on their hot new 8-bit console. Now, this is where I expected the Master System version to simply copy the arcade as closely as possible with its limitations. Instead, they changed quite a bit. The levels were redesigned, the health system was changed, and some mechanics were expanded. Rather than making an inferior arcade version, Sega almost made a different game completely. If you've never played one of these games before, the first thing you'll notice is how easy Shinobi is to understand. All you have to do is move, jump, throw shurikens, rescue hostages, and beat the boss. That's basically it. Sometimes the simplest ideas end up being the best ones. Your primary weapon in this one is an unlimited supply of throwing stars. Thankfully, they're fast, responsive, and incredibly satisfying to use. There's something really satisfying about lining up an enemy from across the screen and taking them out before they even see you. Eventually, you'll get stronger weapons as you rescue hostages. That gives the player the incentive to rescue every hostage they could find instead of simply running to the exit. Saving them can sometimes also give you health refills, which I'm going to tell you right now, you're definitely going to need. It's a nice reward for exploring. If you're a fan of the arcade version, you'll find this one slower and more methodical. And I actually mean that as a compliment. Instead of constantly overwhelming you with enemies, the Master System version gives you a chance to think. Should I jump now? Should I wait? Should I eliminate that enemy first? That slower pace fits the console surprisingly well. Then, there's the bonus stages. You have to hit ninjas with shurikens as they jump towards you. If you succeed, you get upgrades. The most important one being more health. It may be a me problem, but I suck at these bonus levels. So essentially, I did a no health upgrade run. Yay. Speaking of the health system, one of the biggest changes from the arcade game is your health. Instead of dying from one hit like in the arcade, you now have a health bar. Now don't get me wrong, you could still lose that health incredibly quickly if you're careless, but having a few mistakes before dying makes the game feel a lot more fair. Of course, the exception to this rule is when you get knocked into a pit. Now, I'm not against difficult games, I've played plenty of them, but there's a difference between challenging and frustrating. This game has a decent balance. The health system gives you room to learn enemy patterns without constantly sending you back to the beginning. Personally, that alone makes this game perfectly fair. My only issue with this one so far is that my health doesn't refill after a level. But it's not the worst thing, as saving kids does give you health sometimes, right? Could be worse. The stages and level design also surprised me. There's more vertical movement than I expected. You'll be climbing buildings, jumping across rooftops, and there are many settings as well in this one. You'll find yourself working through forests, military bases, things like that, and sometimes
even hell.
All of this to come across some pretty memorable bosses. This game does a nice job of constantly introducing new scenery so it never feels like you're doing the exact same thing over and over. Some jumps require a little precision, some enemies force you to slow down, others encourage you to keep moving before you get surrounded. It kind of creates a rhythm that you get into. One minute you're carefully picking off enemies from a distance, the next you're making a leap of faith where 3 ninjas are waiting to stab you. That balance kept me engaged throughout the game. When it comes to platformers, controls can make or break it. Thankfully, Shinobi controls really well. Joe responds quickly. Jumping is somewhat predictable, although I kind of wonder why he doesn't have the hops you'd expect from a ninja. I mean, look at this. It's just something you got to get used to, I guess. One thing that does work as you'd expect is throwing shurikens. As I played through the game, I rarely found myself blaming the controls when I died. Instead, most of my deaths came from me getting impatient. There are times where I'd rush into a room just to get stomped. You'd think after doing this 5 or 6 times I'd learn, but apparently not. I was honestly expecting this game to completely destroy me. My point of reference though is Ninja Gaiden on the NES. I really thought it'd be on that level difficulty-wise. Instead, I found it just challenging enough, but fair. It asks you to pay attention, learn enemy placement, and avoid rushing headfirst into danger. That's exactly the kind of difficulty I enjoy. It respects your time while making you earn your victory. So at this point, I was starting to realize something. This wasn't just a watered-down arcade port. It wasn't a Ninja Gaiden type of game. It was a carefully redesigned platformer that actually plays to the strengths of the Master System. But we've only covered half the story, because the presentation, music, boss fights, and overall replay value still have a lot to say about whether I was truly missing out or not. Let's keep going. Let's start with the visuals, because this is one area where the Master System has always impressed me. Sega's console was capable of providing really colorful and detailed games, and Shinobi is a great example of that. I always thought that Ninja Gaiden looked great on the NES, and it still does, but let's take a quick look at them side by side so you can make your own judgment. Because of this level of detail, Joe is very easy to recognize. The enemies all have their own distinct looks as well, and the backgrounds do a nice job of making each stage feel different. Everything looks great and they reflect what they're supposed to be. Now, is it arcade perfect? Of course not. The arcade hardware was significantly more powerful. In this version, there are actually fewer sprites on screen, some animations are simplified, and you could definitely tell that you're still playing on an 8-bit home console. But here's the thing. At no point did I feel disappointed by what I was seeing. Instead of trying and failing to recreate the arcade exactly, Sega built something that still looks great within the Master System's limitations. And because the gameplay is a little slower than the arcade version, you're actually able to appreciate the environments more instead of everything flying past you at full speed. Now, let's talk about the music. One thing I've noticed while exploring the Master System library is that Sega's games often have really memorable soundtracks. Shinobi is no exception. The music fits the action perfectly. It has that energetic arcade feel while still sounding unique on the Master System sound chip. I do wish that there were more tracks in general though, but at the same time, I understand that it was likely this way due to limitations. The sound effects are exactly what you'd expect. Shurikens have an impact noise, enemies make enough noise to let you know that something's happening around you, and nothing feels distracting, no jarring noises. If you watched my videos before, you know I don't need every retro game to have a legendary soundtrack. Sometimes the soundtrack just needs to support the gameplay. Shinobi absolutely does that, while being just a bit repetitive. In this game, the bosses actually deserve their own section, because they're actually one of the highlights of the game for me. They're all unique, and each one feels different enough that you can't simply just use the same strategy every time. Some require more careful timing, others test your positioning. A few of them could actually be pretty intimidating the first time you see them. Like, why am I fighting a chopper plus the enemies that are inside it? This is something I'd expect from Contra, not a ninja game. Also, why is this boss so easy? He looks tough, but his name is Lobster. I guess that kinda explained everything for me. Other than Larry over there, what I liked about these boss fights is that they felt like skill checks. They weren't impossible walls that made me want to quit. They were satisfying challenges. And that's a really fine line for a game to walk, but Shinobi did it well. I will say that the last boss took quite a few tries for me, but once you learn how to beat him, it's actually not too bad. So, after finally playing Shinobi, was I missing out? Well, yeah, I really was. This isn't just an interesting historical game, it's still genuinely fun today. The controls have aged well, the gameplay loop is satisfying, the presentation still looks good, and the mechanics work well. I went to this expecting compromise because it was a port. Instead, I found a game that confidently does its own thing. Would I recommend this title to someone who's never owned or played a Master System? Absolutely. In fact, I think this might be one of the first games that I'd recommend. It's approachable, it's challenging without being unfair, and it's a great showcase of what Sega's 8-bit console could do. Shinobi is a great starting point for this journey. Where do I rank this? I think Shinobi is one of the best games I've played on the Master System so far. Not because it's perfect. There are still moments where the difficulty spikes. Jumping can be unforgiving, and if you're expecting an exact arcade experience, you're going to be surprised by just how different it is, for better or for worse. But that's also its biggest strength. Like I said, it's not trying to replicate the arcade game, it complements it. Instead of asking how do we squeeze the arcade onto weaker hardware, Sega countered with how do we make the best possible Shinobi for people playing at home. I'd say they came up with the exact formula required. For me, this is an easy recommendation. I think I prefer Wonder Boy 3, but this is definitely ahead of Alex Kidd. Whether you're discovering the Master System for the first time like I am, or you've loved this console for decades, Shinobi actually deserves its props, and it deserves its reputation. If you've played Shinobi on the Master System, let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you actually prefer it over the arcade version? Do you like the Genesis version more? Or do you think the arcade game is still the definitive way to play? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've got plenty more Master System games to discover, along with other retro consoles that I've managed to miss over the years. So stay a while and listen? Either way, the only thing stealthier than Joe Musashi is how this game snuck onto my list of favorite Master System titles. And that's a wrap. It is time to reboot. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the other side.